Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on health and wellness, inviting you to watch our show coming up this week with Dr. Praise Matamavi. Dr. Praise Matamavi is a transplant surgeon at the University of Mississippi Medical Center who trained at the University of Nebraska in transplant medicine, transplant surgery, and went on from there to do work at the University of Mississippi. And she's also worked at the Queen's Hospital in New York for her residency in general surgery. She has an incredible story. She transitioned from Zimbabwe to work in Michigan as a doctor, and she moved from Michigan to New York, from New York to Nebraska, now from Nebraska to Mississippi. But that's not the end of the story. She's had 2 failed marriages, and she wants to share her heart with divorcees and teenage mothers. Coming from Africa, daughter of a pastor, having a child at 18, but still pursuing her dreams. And today, at the age of 39, she's a transplant surgeon. What an awesome story, but it's all by grace and determination. You don't want to miss it. Look forward to seeing you. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Hi, Dr. Toby Mama, your host on Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby. Thank you for joining us. What a great day. What a special time. We're recording this just after September 11th, remembering those who died after the 9/11 crash. But we have a special guest. She was actually trained in some of the streets of New York City. She came in after the 9/11, right? So she wasn't there when it happened, but she's going to be sharing her experience in residency and in her transplant surgery fellowship, and how she transitioned from Michigan to New York, all the way to Nebraska, and now in Mississippi. So it's a delight, it's a pleasure to have Dr. Praise Matamavi on the show. This great daughter of Zimbabwe was an immigrant at the age of 14, came in with her father's student visa, went to nursing school, got her associates, got her pre-med prerequisites, went to medical school. From there on, she's pursued her dream with passion. She went on to do general surgery in Queens, New York, and then transplant surgery in University of Nebraska. Currently working in the transplant surgery team at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. So we're delighted, we're honored to have Dr. Praise Matamavi with us today. Thank you so much. I call her a great daughter of Zimbabwe. And you know, Zimbabwe is a country we love dearly. It's going through some rough patches right now, and it's currently one of the poorest countries in the world.
Yep.
And I believe the story of praise is gonna show that if you read the book of 1 Samuel chapter 2, the Bible says God will take a man from the dunghill. The dunghill is like a refuse heap. And the Bible says that God will make him a king in a palace. That's what God does for people like Praise Matamavi. No historical medical pedigree, am I correct?
Correct.
You had no family member who had pursued
Nope.
medicine, no family member who had even dreamt of being a surgeon.
No.
You blazed the trail, you opened a path, and others today are following. That is a pretty outstanding story. And for those of us who are in medicine, we know that surgery is a very difficult specialty. It's not just difficult because it's 5 years. It's difficult because it's demanding your time, the energy levels, your concentration levels, your exam requirements. They have the APSITE exams where you need to top the class to keep progressing. In the past, they used to have a pyramid system. I don't know if
Yeah.
they still do,
No, not
where
anymore.
people don't make it to the top, and it was such a gruel system. Not cruel, C-R, it was a grueling, G-R-U-E-L-L. So you have surgeons who work 100 to 120 hours a week in residency. And now you have a female African American surgeon who's not just a surgeon but a transplant surgeon. I don't know if you know the statistics for female African American surgeons in America. I don't know. I thought it was, is it 10 or 20? I don't know what the statistics
It's
are.
very, very, very.
It's-
For
it's-
African American female surgeons, it's very, very small. For transplant surgeons, currently there's 10 of us practicing.
There's 10 in the whole country. So we're talking about probably less than 5% of the country of the United States surgeons are African American female,
Or it
probably
has to be much smaller than that
much smaller than
because
that.
just looking at black female physicians, the number, I think it's around 2.2%. And
Wow.
so then looking at the surgeons in that group, it's going to be very small.
Wow, wow.
Yeah. But
And
we're getting more young people interested and bringing them along.
and most, and I'm not saying this to put them down, but Dr. Matamavi agrees with me. Most female surgeons do breast surgery, right?
No, actually,
No,
no.
it's not
No,
true.
I
They
don't
do
think so.
general surgery.
No, I think because the number is so small, it seems like they do most go into breast surgery. But you see quite a lot in general surgery, in trauma critical care. I think trauma
Okay.
critical care has a lot of female surgeons. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because women are just better at handling traumas.
Okay.
But
So,
you're seeing more numbers in neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery, cardiothoracic surgery,
okay.
transplant surgery. I think transplant surgery as a whole, in terms of females, is actually very, very well represented. I think the numbers are around 20% of
A
transplant
female.
surgeons are female.
Well, you just said there's only 10 African American
Yes.
transplant
Yeah.
female surgeons.
Yeah.
So that tells us a lot. So, but let me ask a question. Where were you on 9/11? Let me just ask that
I was
question.
actually in nursing school.
You were in nursing
I
school,
was, and
okay.
I remember very well. We were doing our practicals.
Oh, wow.
So I came back from doing my practical into the room where we would all congregate, and we were told something has happened. Everybody was quiet, and we were told something had happened. And I just remember the first thought I had, because I had a small baby at that time. My daughter was a year old, and I just remember thinking that, oh my gosh, did something happen at the daycare? Because everybody just looked at my friend and I as we walked into the room, so we didn't know
What's going
what
on?
else, what was going on. And so we were all moved to an auditorium where we could see the happenings and everything that
Mm.
was going on.
Second question. Where were you when they had the guy who tried to bomb the plane in Michigan, Detroit? He had a bomb in his crotch, you know what I mean? Were you in Michigan then?
I don't remember. What
Okay.
year was that?
I think it was 2005. He was a Nigerian young man who had
Oh,
become
Nigerian.
radicalized. And
2005.
but he, Mutalab, he's in jail now, but I just thought you were still in Michigan
I
then.
was. I was in Michigan, but not. I
You were
hadn't.
probably busy.
2005. I hadn't started medical school yet.
Oh,
That was
okay.
my that 1 year where I was trying to get all the credits
Get all
done.
the credits.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me what made you transition from the medical school, from the surgical residency in, I think, Henry Ford to, was it Queens Hospital
Yeah. So I was
in
at
New York?
Sinai Grace it's part of DMC, Detroit Medical Center. So I was there, and then I moved to New York because my husband at the time was doing his neurosurgery training in New York.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's how I ended up in New York.
So you got a position, and how did you enjoy New York City?
So I'm more of a small town girl.
Okay.
And it took me a while. I don't think I actually really got used to the subway system. I would use it, but never really, I just never liked that experience. I guess I'm not
But you
like,
lived in Queens. You don't
I
need the
lived in,
subway
yeah,
if you
but when you
live
go
in
into
Queens.
town,
If
or
you go to
if,
Manhattan,
when you're going to
Brooklyn.
Manhattan, Brooklyn,
Okay.
Bronx, wherever, and but I actually liked living in Queens.
Okay.
Lived in Flushing for a while, and then lived in Jackson Heights, like towards the end of my residency. But yeah, New York was New York is different.
Is there?
You trained
I
there.
trained in New York, right? So tell us a bit about your experience. 4 years in New York for residency.
So I ended up doing 6 years
Oh,
in
really?
in New York. When I moved to New York Presbyterian Queens, I got a position as a prelim resident.
Oh.
So I left my categorical spot in Michigan, took this prelim residency because I trusted that God will make a way and He would make it happen.
Another risk. Lord have mercy.
You sometimes you have to take risks, and you have to trust that you will end up where you need to end up.
Right.
Because I think the biggest thing is, for some of us who are very much control freaks, you want to be in control of everything. But once you surrender and you say, Lord, I surrender everything to you, do your will in my life, you know what I'm supposed to do, you know where I'm supposed to be, make it happen,
Wow.
then it relieves you of so much pressure,
Oh, wow.
you know. So I think at that point, that's when I started really learning total surrender. And I said, whatever happens, it's in God's hands. Because, you know, my well-meaning advisors were saying, why would you leave a categorical
Oh,
spot and
yeah.
take a
It's difficult.
preliminary
Yeah.
spot where you have no guarantee that you'll have a position the next year? And I said, well, I trust that God will make it happen for me anyway. And he did. So they ended up keeping me as a resident, and I finished my
Finished
residency
up.
training there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have family or friends in New York? I
No.
mean, Zimbabweans, I'm sure, are everywhere.
No, I did. Actually, the whole time I was in New York, I did not meet any Zimbabwean. I knew
Oh, they
of.
have an embassy there.
Yeah, they
So
do.
if you wanted to meet, you could have gone to the United Nations and said, any Zimbabweans here?
But you know, residency,
Oh,
it's
you don't have time
grueling.
for
You don't
that.
have
Yeah.
time. I mean, I used to actually go to Central Park a lot
Okay.
to run. I used to run in Central Park. I used to do a lot of my running in Central Park. So that was like, you know, my time in the city, really. But you don't really have that much time to be looking for people. And I had a very strong support system and a lot of my friends, even though my best friend lived in Washington, D.C., and my one other best friend lived in Philly.
Are they
But
physicians? No.
they're not physicians.
Okay.
But then they were like my support people, so I didn't
Okay.
feel the need to have,
Right.
you know, other
That kind
people.
of.
Yeah.
So you moved from, you said Auburn in Michigan. That was where you lived initially,
So,
where you had the university. You said Auburn.
oh, East Lansing?
No, the where your dad was doing his master's.
Oh, Andrews University in Barron Springs.
Okay, Barron Springs. So
Yeah.
compare Barron Springs with Queens.
Oh, so different. So Barron Springs is a village.
Okay.
It's about 1,800 population, and that's during the school year because there's the university there. Pretty much everybody knows everybody. We have now 2 traffic lights in the
Okay.
town. Our hangout spot growing up used to be the McDonald's or the gas station. Rite Aid. That's like, we didn't even
Really?
have a Walmart. Most famously, Muhammad Ali had a house in Barron Springs.
Really?
So growing up, we used to see him a lot. You know, like at
Oh.
the post office, at Dairy Queen, whatever.
Oh.
So it was, you know, that's like our claim
Claim
to
to
fame.
fame, right.
But otherwise, it's just a very small, quaint town. I never used to lock my doors in Barron Springs.
And your dad still stays there?
No, he
Oh,
moved to California.
Oh, he's
so
now
now
in
he,
California.
yeah,
Okay.
now he lives in California.
Wow.
Couldn't stand the cold too long.
So you moving to New York was much bigger city
Yeah, but I had been living in Detroit
in
before
Detroit, which was
going to
also
New
a
York.
big city. Yeah, and I guess Detroit is pretty racially diverse.
I think so.
So Nebraska was different in
Yeah.
terms of, was it more Caucasian than
Yes,
African American?
definitely. I think the statistics in Nebraska is about. I remember when I was moving to Nebraska, doing all the research about about the state itself. It was 4.8% African American. So it's not very racially diverse. But
Okay.
I wanted to go to Nebraska since I was a second-year medical student.
Yeah, tell us about that, because you said there was a person in Nebraska who gave you some inspiration to pursue transplant surgery.
Yes. So actually, when I was a second-year medical student, I had a professor who told me, I had been reading this book called Walk on Water. It's actually a book about a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon. Because remember, I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon before. So I was reading this book, and then one of my professors saw me reading the book, and he said, "Oh, are you interested in cardiothoracic surgery?" I said, "Yeah, I think it's just very technically demanding, and it's just very interesting." And so he said, "Well, I used to think that, but then I discovered that pediatric liver transplant, that's also very demanding and challenging and pretty beautiful surgery on its
Okay.
own." And so when he said that, he said, "I actually know a guy who runs the transplant program in Nebraska, who
Wow.
trained at Botsford Hospital, which is one of the osteopathic hospitals in Detroit, outside of Detroit." And he said, yeah, he does small bowel transplants and all these amazing things. And I was like, wow, I've never even heard of small bowel transplant. So when I got home, I researched him, and then I was like, I want to go and train there for
Wow.
transplant surgery. So already I had, a goal from
Right,
when I was a
right.
second year medical student that I wanted to be a transplant surgeon and I wanted to go and train at this place,
Wow.
which, it's just so amazing.
And you faced obstacles because you said New York Presbyterian, you did only 3 months of transplant in the whole
Actually,
electives.
1 month.
1 month.
Yeah.
I mean, people look at your resume and they're like, well, she doesn't fit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I can tell you that the people that generally train at University of Nebraska for transplant fellowship are so amazingly accomplished.
Right.
With some who have done a lot of research in transplant, published so much papers in transplant, and just they're all very, very, very accomplished. Even one of my good friends who was my junior fellow, she did hepatobiliary fellowship before she even did her transplant fellowship, and she's so phenomenal.
Hepatobiliary surgery? Wow.
So, it's like just being able to have trained among such greats. For someone like me, I come from very humble beginnings. I don't have a pedigree in terms of where I've trained, you know. I've just been walking by faith, just allowing God to show the way and to open up doors for me. And He did open up doors for me that I would have never even imagined. Because I can tell you that, when I applied for my fellowship, I didn't have a letter from a transplant surgeon for recommendation. All my letters were from my professors who had trained me in general surgery, who knew me, and that was that. Because generally, when you're looking at an applicant, you'd say, well, but she doesn't have much experience in transplant. She doesn't know people in transplant.
She hasn't written any papers in the Green Journal or
Right. But when you have, genuine people that want you to succeed, and it's your place, and that's where God wants you to be, then it will happen.
Wow.
God will open up doors for you. I am
Pretty
just living
amazing.
proof that God will open up doors for you.
Wow. Tell us a bit about the book you wrote. You want to show my viewers the passion and purpose and black female surgeons. Tell us about the genesis and what the inspiration behind it was.
So with this book, this is a book that I wished I had had when I was younger. Because, like I said, I was inspired by Gifted Hands by Ben Carson. But then Ben Carson is a boy.
The male.
And as a little girl, I wanted to see women that looked like me who were doing what I wanted to do. Because there's so much representation matters. And there is, a saying that one of my professors, Dr. William Anderson, he was one of my professors at Michigan State and also at Sinai Grace. He always used to say, you cannot be what you cannot see. And it's so true. It's very hard to be something that you cannot even see or imagine.
Concept, right.
That when I was applying for general surgery residency, I went to talk to him to try to figure out my interview schedule because, I had all these interviews at all these programs, but I didn't know which would be a good fit for me. So I went to talk to him about it, and I said, I have all these programs, but I know I can't afford to go to all of them for interviews. How do I create my list? And he said, well, first of all, before we do all that, let me introduce you to someone. So he called a girl who was actually an intern in the program, who is now one of my good friends.
An
and
intern
at Sinai Grace.
Okay.
Because I was a fourth-year medical student at the time.
Right.
So he called this girl down to his office. She came and he introduced me to her. Her name is Violet. And she is a trauma surgeon now. She's from Kenya.
Okay.
So for him, he wanted me to see somebody who looked like me.
Right.
Because he figured that was going to be motivation enough for me to see if she can do it, I can do it too.
Oh, wow.
So I think that was the biggest inspiration for this book, because I want little girls to, there's pictures in this one, there's like another edition without pictures.
Is Violet in the book?
She is in the book.
Since she inspired it.
Yes, she is in the book, yes. Because then any little girl can open this book, or even a big girl can open this book and see. For instance, I just opened at chapter 5, and this is Dr. Mumba Chalwe. She's a urologist in Zambia, the first female urologist in Zambia. And so for someone to just look and to be able to say, hey, she did it, despite all the
Oh, wow.
obstacles, she
Mhm.
did it. I can do it too.
How many surgeons do you have?
So there is, including me, it's 75 total.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
So
African
it's
or an African American
so it's globally. So
females?
there is about 27 countries
Oh, wow.
represented. Yeah.
How can they get the book? I'm sure people are going to be Googling Praise Matamavi. We're
So
going to
it's
have her name on the screen, but we'd like
it's
to
on
know how they
Amazon.
can get it. Okay.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon,
Okay.
and there's different variations, but this is the most popular and the most
My
common
wife has
with
been reading
pictures.
it. I'm just hoping she doesn't wake up tomorrow and say, I want to go to medical school and I want to be a surgeon. I'm like, you're 40 something years old, please.
No, she's very accomplished in her own right.
I'm like,
She
help
really
us,
is.
Lord. So that's amazing. That's so awesome. Now, so the book has been in the market for some time. Tell us what you see in the next 5 to 10 years in your. So let's talk about from Nebraska. You did 3 years, right?
2 years.
2 years,
Hmm.
and then you moved to Mississippi, to the University of
Yes.
Mississippi,
Yes.
and now you've been here a year
Yes.
plus.
Hmm.
Awesome. And during that time, you wrote the book. What do you see for yourself going forward in the near future? Because you're such a planner. I'm sure
Yes. Oh,
there's
there's lots of
milestones,
plans.
there's God marks, there's
So yeah, I plan everything out. Like this year, things have been a little bit different with with COVID, but my near future, the things that I want to be even more involved in, mission work is a big part of my life. So now I'll have more time to be able to do more missions. And I actually would hope to create a program where I can be able to take some of the residents that I work with on
okay.
mission trips so that
Wow.
they can experience the whole aspect of global surgery,
Right.
because there's a lot that goes into you know global health, but in
Hmm.
terms of infectious diseases like HIV, AIDS, malaria, things
Hmm.
like that, TB.
There's a group
But
called PACS. I'm going to introduce you to
oh
them.
yeah,
Pan African Association of Christian Surgeons,
okay.
but they're all over Africa, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and they have excellent facilities, excellent hospitals. It's a great organization you need to be aware of, and they work a lot with the Adventist, Loma Linda
Oh,
especially. So I'll connect you with PACS. They do an awesome, awesome job, and I think you'll
yeah,
be an
that would be
asset to
great.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And of course, so obviously you're in Jackson,
Mhm.
Mississippi. Your kids are settled into school, and so the next 5 years, just missions, rising up the academic ladder,
Yes, so
publishing, doing
publishing, and I think one of my
research.
passions is also just bringing awareness to organ donation,
Uh,
especially in the African American community and in the African community, because the problem is that there are so many misconceptions
hmm
are surround and a lot of myths surrounding organ donation, that we don't see the numbers that we need to be seeing in our own community.
hmm
And I always tell people that there is nothing like giving the gift of life to
To
somebody else,
somebody else.
even if you're not able to do it while you're alive, but in your death, because we recycle other things. Why can't we recycle our organs? If
Hmm
somebody else can find good use for them when you are gone,
Right.
why not give them to
Give it
somebody
to them.
else? But I think the biggest thing is just education, educating people so that we can understand that it's not that you are treated differently
Hmm
if you're an organ donor, because I think that's what worries a lot of people. They worry
Right.
that if I'm an organ donor and I get in an accident, they're not going to give me the care that I need to be able to survive, because they'll just say, oh, she's an organ donor, so we'll just take her organs. No, that's not how it works.
hmm
So I think there's a lot of misconceptions that surround the
Right.
organ donation process, and I can tell you that I understand that, because transplant as a whole, it's a mystery to a lot
Right.
of people, and so there just needs to be more education, more awareness, so that we can actually be there to
hmm
provide organs for each other.
It's a big deal, yeah. Mora, you want to talk about Mora, the
Hmm.
Mississippi Organ
Recovery
Recovery?
agency.
So what do they
So
do?
So they basically facilitate organ donation. They raise a lot of awareness with organ donation. And we actually have a very specialized facility there where,
At UMC.
No, at Mora.
At
Mora is a very
on
specialized
Lakeland
on
Drive.
Lakeland Drive.
Right.
And so anybody that's interested, they can go on their website if you want to be an.
So when you fly to Tupelo,
Mm-hmm,
is that to harvest?
mm-hmm,
Okay. Can you fly to Memphis? Can you fly
mm-hmm.
to anywhere?
Anywhere.
Mora facilitates that, or who? I'm just curious what the how they expedite the payment and all those bills that come with it.
So I'm not.
Well, you wouldn't know, but
I'm
yeah.
not sure about all the bills because it's a lot of money that goes into just the whole process. Because when an organ becomes available, let's say the organ is available in New Orleans, and it's, let's say, a liver for somebody in New Orleans, and so there are different ways of doing it. Sometimes there's a surgeon that's available to recover the organs, but because transplant surgery is so specialized, the people who can recover the organs is a very small group. So sometimes there is no surgeon available to recover the organs. But if there is a surgeon available to recover the liver, then there has to be a plane there that's waiting for the liver to be put on the plane and come to Jackson, because the time is money.
Right.
Because you want the organ to within a specific amount of time. So depending which organ, the kidney can last a little bit longer. And so with that, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of background people, because what people see is the surgeon, because they say, oh, the transplant surgeon did the transplant, she's a hero or a heroine. But really, there is a whole team of people that are the heroes that make the whole process possible. So it's very, very complicated process, but very sophisticated, and it's just an amazing thing that I hope one day we can have just even a little bit of that in my home country, or at least in our region.
We will.
Yeah.
We will. I'm sure it's already happening to some degree. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about transplant and what Dr. Praise Matamavi does. Inspirational, exciting, a diligent person, a God-fearing woman. I've been inspired. I'm sure you've also been inspired with her story. And she's going to share her heart with us about transplant surgery and a few nuggets about her life growing up in Zimbabwe, how she grew up with a sister and her mother, and what happened to her mother along the way, and what life has taught her in her last number of years. You don't want to miss the story. Dr. Praise Matamavi is an inspiration. You are going to be blessed. Look out for us, faithandpower.online. Write to us, P.O. Box 550 71294. See you next week. God bless you. Jesus love. All right. Awesome.